The Model M keyboard is easily the most influential keyboard ever made, and many people still use one today. Even if you use something else, you're no doubt familiar with the layout the Model M pioneered, which is still standard industry-wide. But the tactile feel of the Model M's own buckling spring mechanism is simply unmatched by modern mechanical keyboards, or certainly by more common rubber domes, with the only downside being that you basically need to be working in a cone of silence if you want to keep your coworkers happy or your next-door neighbors sleeping peacefully.
The cone of silence. I am deeply concerned about the conference room.
What?
I did a roundup of IBM Model M's a little while back in which I intentionally left out the modern Unicomp variant because I don't really consider it the same keyboard. You'll see why throughout this review. But in that video I did promise to eventually look at a Unicomp Model M separately. I've sort of been dreading it though, because Unicomp is basically a mom and pop shop, and I was afraid that not all of this review was going to be 100% positive. I'm not here to tear down a company doing something out of a labor of love, but I also don't want to make a dishonest video. But a bunch of you have asked me when this was coming, so I guess I've got to get to it. So I went ahead and ordered a new Model M directly from Unicomp's website. So here's how it comes packaged from Unicomp, and this is my first time seeing this box, just as it is yours. Let's see what we got here. Always be careful around knives, children. And here we go. So this is sort of similar to how I remember my my last IBM Model M being packaged, which I also purchased new. That was a Lexmark model, and it came in sort of a box like this, although this is a little worrying. I don't know if you saw that. A couple of the keys have... What's up with that, Unicomp? Aha! It's not uncommon for keys or the spacebar to become dislodged during shipping. Still, kind of strange. Also, it's oddly dirty inside. A lot of dirt. Don't understand that. This is a new keyboard. Well, let's just get these keycaps back on for now. They are double keycaps, which is nice. Jeez. Okay, so there we go. It's now put together. I'm actually happy to see that there's not this goofy Unicomp logo on here that I've seen on some of the newer ones. Despite being unacceptably dirty out of the box, this is a brand new 2017 Unicomp Classic Model M. I had initially thought about buying a used one with the idea being to make it a fair comparison to my other Model Ms, but I decided it's really only fair to Unicomp to review what they're currently making today. These keyboards have changed over the years and are still changing. There are differences between my Unicomp and even some I've seen in other videos from just a few years ago. For example, the lettering on my keys is different than on some slightly older Model Ms. It's much thicker, easier to read but less refined. And of course that stupid logo in the top right is gone now, which is a good thing. I did order a basic classic Model M so I could directly compare it to my earlier IBMs. I wanted as close to the same keyboard as possible. That means no Windows keys, the original larger case, and the standard beige color scheme. My one nod to the modern era is a USB cable. Unicomp offers many different models these days with buckling springs, some of which are smaller and all of which are available with Windows keys. So if you're in the market yourself, don't think you're limited to only what I'm showing you here. You can get a more modern keyboard from them. I've just got a specific reason for going basically full-on retro. The feel and construction should remain the same whatever options you choose, though. Just a brief aside here about Unicomp itself and the basic history of these keyboards. The Model M was originally produced by IBM in 1985 at their plant in Lexington, Kentucky, as well as a few other places around the world for systems sold outside the United States. Only 6 years later, in 1991, IBM spun off its peripheral division responsible for things like printers and keyboards, and that new company became Lexmark. Lexmark initially employed 5,000 people, later reduced to 3,000 through layoffs and attrition. They continued operating in the same plant with mostly the same people, and they produced IBM-labeled Model Ms until 1996. From 1985 to 1996 then, these keyboards were produced in the same Lexington, Kentucky factory with continuously maintained and upgraded tooling. The construction did change over the years to save on costs, but in minor ways. Lettering went from 2 colors to 1, cables went from coiled and detachable to straight and permanently attached, the internal speaker that had become mostly useless was removed, and the metal backplates became slightly thinner, leading to slightly reduced weight. Many of these changes actually happened before the Lexmark spin-off, but the overall feel of the keyboards really didn't change at all, and if you didn't look at the lettering or the labels, I'll bet that no one would be able to tell a 1985 IBM Model M from a 1996 Lexmark. I have one of each, so I say this from personal experience. After 1996, a group of former Lexmark employees bought the tooling and the rights to the Model M design and formed Unicomp, also based in Lexington, Kentucky. They operate in their own small factory with a small staff, and they're using what's now 32-year-old tooling. That said, they are still making Model Ms, and they deserve props for that. So hats off to you guys. But let's get to the important bit here. What's it like to type on this thing? Well, in absolute terms, it's very nice. It is a Model M. It has the same great mechanism that modern key switches can't really hope to recreate. If you've never typed on a buckling spring keyboard before, it's almost impossible to describe how good it feels. The keys just have a smoothness that no modern mechanical key switch does, and they also have a heft to them without feeling necessarily heavy. It's just a feel of quality that you don't get from any other mechanical keyboard. It's like eating at a high-end restaurant after years of trying to live on McDonald's. And Unicomp gives you that for only $84. It's almost a bargain. Another quick digression here about my typing, since some of you have commented on it in other videos. Yes, I do have my own style, and no, it doesn't really matter. Self-taught typists don't type any slower than trained typists, no matter how goofy they may look. And I type 100 words per minute using 6 or 7 fingers, depending on my mood. Typing is kind of like playing guitar. There's really no right or wrong way to do it. And I subscribe to the Neil Young school of guitar playing and typing. Anyway, back to the keyboard, because honestly, we've got a few issues here. First, it's obvious that the Model M tooling is just wearing out. You can actually see it, and you can feel it too. Some keys are taller than others. I've taken them apart to figure out why, but there's really no smoking gun. It's just tiny inconsistencies stacked together until you get this. These are double keycaps, so if the socket, key stem, and keycap are all cut just a tiny bit wrong, the heights are not going to match. The key stems are also pretty loose in their sockets. A standard test is to run your hand over all the keys a few times to feel how much they move, and these keys move a lot. Compare this to my 1985 Model M, which is the best I have in terms of key tightness. I can even twist a letter and it stays that way. I can't do that on my other Model Ms. This not only makes the keyboard look kind of wonky all the time, but you can feel it. Rather than moving very precisely up and down, the keys can move a bit from side to side in basically any direction. This makes typing feel imprecise. I can feel the keys wiggling under my fingers as I press them. The only way I can think to describe the feel is loosey-goosey. To give you kind of an exaggerated analogy, it can sometimes feel like typing on a plastic bag full of marbles. The keys just really don't feel positively anchored down. Now, Model Ms have always been really prone to dirt and dust affecting the typing feel. Yuck. So when somebody describes the feel of a used older one, you can't really ever know if the keyboard's just got dusty stems or sockets. I actually owned a 5th white or gray label Model M at one point that I threw out because it was so internally dirty that typing on it was like typing on a set of rusty nails. And that's not an exaggeration, that's really what it felt like. It's very hard to fully bring back a Model M from that point. But this is a brand new Model M, and I'd say it feels similar to a Model M that's starting to need a good cleaning. There's a little bit of grittiness to it, probably because of that slight looseness that lets the keys move from side to side. My 1996 Lexmark, which I bought new and have babied like a firstborn child for these 21 years, has no such grittiness. It's still completely smooth and ultra precise, almost as if every key has been individually oiled. This is how Model Ms are supposed to feel, but the Unicomp doesn't quite get there despite being built with the same tooling and having 21 fewer years of use. It still feels better than 99% of other keyboards out there, but not as good as older Model Ms, and this time it's definitely not down to dust. Moving on to the case, there are some odd gaps that aren't present on my Lexmark Model M, which is the keyboard this is based on. The case is also a different type of plastic versus my other Model Ms, all of which are a kind of shiny yet textured plastic. The Unicomp's got a matte finish. Some people might actually prefer that, but the plastic's also a lot thinner, leading to a lot of creaking and flexing even when just handling it normally. Now I know you're wondering about the weight, so here it is. It's a bit lighter than either my Lexmark or original IBM. I'm going to go ahead and void my warranty here to show you what's inside. So here's one reason for the odd gaps. The entire top of the case is warped. For some keyboards this might straighten out when it's all put together, but the Model M is just held together by 4 bolts in the back and a few clips in the front. The plastic itself is supposed to hold its own shape. It's not going to be forced into shape by its fasteners. My other Model Ms always keep their shape when I take them apart. Otherwise, internally it actually looks pretty similar to my Lexmark, of course with a new controller board. But otherwise, the backplate looks pretty much the same, with the same plastic rivet construction that's always been an issue with Model Ms. Watch for my upcoming video on the bolt mod. And everything else is similar too. So it seems like where this keyboard's being let down a bit is in cheaper outer casing and just worn out tooling. By the way, I am a little curious about this sticker on the backplate that has a 1995 date on it. Was this actually made in 1995, or is that just some kind of copyright date? It certainly doesn't look like one though. Now let's pretend for a second that I ordered this keyboard in black and added Windows keys to it. In other words, I wanted a more modern keyboard, just one with buckling springs. At that point I think you do have to compare it to a standard modern mechanical keyboard, and here I think Unicomp does better. Even a slightly loose and imprecise buckling spring mechanism is still better than most modern key switches. I like my Corsair K70, and I've actually grown to love my Motospeed and its Otemu switches. But they are just not as smooth to type on or as consistent in feel and typing force from key to key. And that's something that drives me absolutely freaking batty about all modern mechanical keyboards. That said, Unicomp keyboards are still missing some modern features, for example audio controls, though you can always remap some unused keys if you want to. There's no backlighting either, and the footprint of a classic Model M is just Godzilla-sized compared to something like my Motospeed. Even the Ultra Classic is still quite a bit bigger, so there are still pros and cons. So is it worth buying a Unicomp Model M? Well, I can pretty definitively say not this one. I bought this model specifically to compare with my older Model Ms and make this video, and it really doesn't hold up to those keyboards, including my Lexmark. If you don't care about any of the modern options and just want the best typing feel in a high-quality case, get a used IBM, preferably a clean one. I can't really see a reason to get a Unicomp Classic 101-key keyboard unless you hate Windows keys as much as I do, and you really want a beige old-school Model M, but you absolutely have to have USB, and you can't find an active converter anywhere. Having said all that, I will be selling this keyboard if you're interested. Things get more complicated if you want something more modern, though. Maybe you're just in the market for a mechanical keyboard and Unicomp is one of your options. Unicomp is the only company making buckling spring keyboards in black and with both Windows keys and USB plugs, for example. At that point, I think the question comes down to how much you also want the things the Unicomp is still missing. But the typing feel of even Unicomp's slightly loose-feeling buckling spring mechanism is still better than any other mechanical keyboard I know of today. And Unicomp, if you're watching this, I hope you take all of this in the spirit it was intended. I love the fact that you're still making these keyboards. If you ask me, you're just selling them too cheap, and that seems to be dragging on the quality a bit. I'd love to see you guys be able to invest a bit in fixing up the tooling and using some better materials again to make these keyboards worthy of the Model M name. I think someone who'd pay $84 specifically for a Model M would probably be willing to spend more if it means getting something closer to the feel of buying a brand new IBM Model M in 1985. I know I would.